Before I start, in case you didn't know, I'm running the Melbourne Marathon this October, and to give me extra motivation, I've launched a fundraiser for Beyond Blue to help those struggling with their mental health. The link is in the video description. A huge thank you to everyone who's donated. If you think you're struggling, please make sure you have somebody to talk to, family, friends, or any mental health support organization similar to Beyond Blue. Just make sure you get all the help you need. It's okay to not be okay, and a conversation can go a very long way. Also, warning, this review will spoil parts of the movie The Godfather, but given that this game takes place during the events of the film and the reason why the developers did this are key to the story and this review, I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. I recommend watching The Godfather first, it's a masterpiece, then this review. Otherwise, keep watching. I mean, what is there to say about The Godfather that hasn't been said? It's considered one of the greatest movies ever made, and I concur. The first time I saw it was in 2010 when... This is trivial. I was best on ground in a football match and I won a voucher for a free rental at my local video store, and I picked The Godfather because of how often it was raved as one of the best, if not the best movie ever, and I was just curious as to why. And it essentially made me a fan of the gangster genre overnight. It was unlike any other film I had seen up to that point. And like most mature films, the older I've gotten, the more I appreciate the hidden details and themes, family, violence, power, Italian-American immigration, and its follow-up, Part 2, is arguably even better. But I'll mention that film in a future Godfather Part 2 review. To give you an idea of how much of a fan I was of the films, even as a teenager, I got this 40th anniversary box set as an 18th birthday present, which include DVDs and Blu-rays of the trilogy, 10 collectible photo cards, a poster of the Corleone family tree, and a reproduction of the first film's screenplay. Box size is a little excessive, but even though we're past the 50th anniversary by this point, it's still a box set worth preserving for years to come. But although you see the occasional violent death, it's a very slow-paced film more focused on acting performances and a time capsule of Italian-American mafia in the 20th century, so how do you turn that sort of film into a video game? The first mention of a Godfather game was in March 2004, being published by Electronic Arts. It was considered one of the first EA games to focus on a more mature market, because when you think about it, every EA published title was rated no higher than teen by the ESRB, although they neglected to mention Dungeon Keeper being the first M-rated EA game, but anyway. The first official unveiling was in December of that year, with a pre-rendered cutscene showing Vito Corleone as if you, the viewer, just asked him for a favor, like Bonacera in the film's intro. Developed by EA Redwood Shores, aka Visceral Games, mostly known for James Bond, Tiger Woods, PGA Tour series, The Simpsons game, and the Dead Space series, they made so many video games in the 2000s, and this just happens to be one of them. At least 120 people were working on this game. They considered many different game genres for The Godfather, including a first-person shooter, an RPG, a real-time strategy, before going with an open-world sandbox, because of course you would. They watched the movie hundreds of times collectively and read the novel. They had great respect for The Godfather as a story, but they didn't fear it. The game would set itself during the events of the film, but in the eyes of an original character the player creates working for the Corleone family. The developers also wanted as many people who worked on the original film as possible, with actors Robert Duvall, James Caan, and Abe Victorita all reprising their roles as Tom Hagen, Sonny Corleone, and Salvatore Tessio respectively. Unfortunately, Al Pacino, who played Michael Corleone, not only declined to reprise his role, but refused to lend his likeness for the game, instead lending it to Scarface The World Is Yours. I mean, it's not like Pacino's voice sounded the same as it did in 1972 anyway, though I wonder why he didn't just lend his likeness for both games. However, Marlon Brando does reprise his role as Vito Corleone. Sort of. He recorded all the lines needed for the game, but at nearly 80 years old at the time, where his health had deteriorated to the point where he needed an oxygen mask to breathe, this made it physically impossible to record any direct dialogue, so they used a voice actor, Doug Abrams, to portray Don Vito instead. Though one part of the game where Vito is in the hospital with Michael, in the sort of condition that would require an oxygen mask, they used Brando's lines here, as well as a few audio clips taken directly from the film.
I want you to arrange a meeting with the heads of the 5 families. This war stops now.
Making this Brando's final performance before passing away on July 2004. It may be only a few lines, but it still counts.
Well, that's life. Everybody's got their own tale of sorrow.
However, a couple of crew members of the original film weren't very positive towards the game. Director Francis Ford Coppola claimed Paramount didn't inform him that they were making a video game, and when he saw a preview, he believed the returning characters from the original film were mishandled. However, game producer David DeMartini claimed Francis gave the developers access to his private library, which included props, costumes, and notes from the Godfather production, including, quote, a lot of notes he's taken in the original screenplay as well as in the book. I'm guessing he's referring to his special prompt book. Seriously, watch the video how Francis analyzed the novel, making his own version for the film. The lengths he goes to get every single little detail that made the film a masterpiece is a must watch. Who knows whether or not Francis knew about the game in advance, but needless to say, his disapproval is undisputed. Additionally, Mario Puzo's son, Anthony, sued Paramount Pictures over the game, claiming they had an agreement in 1992 stating they were entitled to royalties to any media relating to the Godfather franchise and failed to receive any for this game, with Puzo winning the lawsuit and Paramount paying out an undisclosed sum. The game was officially premiered in Little Italy on February 2005 with Duval, Khan, and John Martino in attendance, but didn't show any demos until E3 in May, debuting its Black Hand melee controls and announcing a port would be available for the upcoming Xbox 360. EA initially planned for a fall 2005 release, but Redwood Shores delayed it to next year, with DeMartini explaining that when you're working with an IP like The Godfather, it's crucial the game's quality wouldn't be questioned when it was launched. The Godfather was released for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC on March 2006, the PlayStation Portable and Xbox 360 in September, and for the PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii on March 2007. And I'm gonna surprise, maybe even shock you, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the Wii version. Wait a minute. There we go. Or as this game calls it on the cover, the Black Hand Edition. The reason I picked it for this video, of all the open world games I've reviewed over the years, I thought I'd spice things up by trying something more unconventional to control what is essentially a licensed GTA clone on a Nintendo console. Okay, the honest answer. For a while I waited for a good price on the Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 version. I mean, what have I done to make you treat me so disrespectfully with those prices? So I was like, the hell with it. Got the Wii version because it was the cheapest. But it's certainly no slouch. Graphically it might look the same as the 6th gen ports, but it includes all the bonus content from the PlayStation 3 version. And that was an offer I couldn't refuse, as I'll explain later in the review. I played The Godfather once on my cousin's PlayStation 2 when it was relatively new, but it's too vague to remember. I still hadn't seen the film by that point. So going into this game now, it feels like I'm playing it for the first time. Also, like Need for Speed Nitro recently, this is a game that tied for the most votes on the Patreon suggestion thread. Thank you, Select Khaled. Since I was planning on reviewing this game soon anyway, I might as well count this as another Patreon suggestion ticked off.
Good week, huh?
Yeah, some high rollers. I'm gonna celebrate tonight, taking Serafina to the Continental Club.
Johnny Trapani was a very successful businessman, owning a bakery that was considered a pillar of Little Italy, and loyal to Don Vito Corleone and constantly sabotaging his rival Emilio Barzini. He plans to celebrate his successful run with his wife, until the bakery is blown to smithereens and gunned down by Barzini's men in retaliation, while his son Aldo finds him in disbelief.
You are old enough, and the time is right. You will take your revenge.
9 years later, taking place where the film begins, Aldo's mother pleads to the Don to save her son who had been running with a lot of bad people over the years. Luca Brazzi, after being grateful for being invited to his daughter's wedding to the Don, he orders Luca to find Aldo and bring him into the family and slowly rise up the rankings, becoming a highly trusted worker for Don Corleone. And the rest of the story basically intertwines with the film but expanded with a few of Aldo's perspective and intentions.
Well, that's bad luck for me, and bad luck for you.
At first I had no idea what to expect. I initially thought I was going to play as Michael and set itself just before and partially during the events of the film, maybe briefly traveling to Sicily. You're basically watching a B-plot to The Godfather, which is a very interesting way of structuring the story, where the main plot remains intact but still providing the scenarios that look more in place for a video game.
Leave the gun.
Take the cannoli.
Francis had a point that you only see the returning characters for a brief moment really, apart from Clemenza, and you go out shooting people. There's one scene with Michael in the meeting. To those who have seen the movie, you know the scene I'm talking about, but then it continues into a chase, getting shot. I mean, wasn't the whole point of their plan in the movie to be as efficient as possible? Point is, I feel like they went overboard on some scenes. But at the same time, being a video game, you have to take some liberties to make it exciting. Most of the film is set in the eyes of the highest of higher-ups in the mob, and Aldo is the outsider doing all the dirty work. It's a hard line to balance between being a video game while respecting the source material, especially when that source material is the most cherished of them all. You need to keep it intact. It's the Godfather, for crying out loud.
It's all right.
Father wouldn't want to hear this. This is business, not personal, Sonny.
They shot my father. That's business, your ass.
Even the shooting of your father was business, not personal,
Well,
Sonny.
then business will have to suffer, all right?
I've already discussed how plenty of big names from the original film reprise their roles, but how does it all add up? I mean, isn't it obvious?
Sonny, you're my brother, but
Oh,
sometimes...
Christ, Tom, I'm sorry. Look, you know you're my brother ever since the day I brought you home.
Okay, they're not on par with their Oscar-nominated performances, and it's easy to be distracted by how much older they are recording their lines for a character model from 1972. But if I had to choose between another actor or as many of the returning actors as you can find, I'm gonna go with the latter. After all, who knows these characters better than them?
It's business. Only business.
Oh, sure. You're absolutely right. Time to get out of the business, my friend.
The developers allowed the actors to change their dialogue during recording so it fits better with their character they played over 30 years ago. They captured the performances using face-over motion capture, then used other stunt actors for the characters' movements during the cutscenes. The models of the returning characters in particular look really good, especially for a 6th-gen open-world title. The downside is that it makes our main protagonist Aldo look like he's recycled from another game since he's not based off a real-life person, not as detailed.
I was the bait?
No, a suspect. We had to be sure.
It's also a perfect metaphor when comparing character development because there isn't much to Aldo. I mean, he needs to be told how gang rankings are structured when he's already with the Corleone family, and whenever a key scene based off the film occurs, he's just in the background and says, okay, without questions asked.
You'll start out as an associate, nothing more.
That means you'll be working for me, kid. But if you want to be an associate, you'll have to earn it first.
Honestly, halfway through the game, I completely forgot the reason he's with the family is to avenge his father. I think more a B story for Aldo, whether it's expanding on the relationship between him and Frankie or more story missions. At least use more of the map and increase the gameplay time since... Okay, I know it says I played this game for nearly 20 hours, but if I didn't count the moments when I left it paused to work on the script for this video, it would be half as long. At least you have potentially 1,000 different styles for Aldo. The good thing about the character creation, or mob face as this game calls it, everything is all in one store before you even enter the game, including your own personal barber. The Wii version here includes all the content from the PS3 Don's edition, so I was quite overwhelmed by the number of outfits available from the very start, with one purchasable piece of clothing allowing you to change shirt, vest, lucky coats, or tie, and all their patterns and colors. Being able to preview what you're hoping to get in the future is a blessing from the Godfather right there, and it gives you more confidence to customize your idea of a perfectly styled gangster straight out of the 40s. So much, yet so simple to grasp. That's when you know you nailed the customization aspect. But to afford the rest of the wardrobe, the life of a gangster is about earning money and respect, and the developers wanted the side missions to be just as important as the story in this game, and they're mandatory in advancing it.
Little negotiation goes a long way.
Got it. And if the guy don't look like he's gonna crack?
Then you remind him why he needs protection in the first place.
Scattered all over New York are nearly 100 businesses under protection by gangs, some with their own hidden rackets, including gambling and drugs, and warehouses and hubs with the number of mobsters guarding each one. For every business you acquire, every enemy you kill, and piece of fancy outfit you're currently wearing earns you respect, which are important to advance the story.
See? I told you this business was interesting, huh?
But obviously rival mobs won't take it lying down. You also have a vendetta meter where the more you kill from a specific mob, the higher the meter goes up. And when it's full, it triggers a mob war, basically causing your rivals to go after you and your businesses for the next 40 minutes until you either bribe the FBI or fight back by blowing up their businesses. That's honestly a bit too long, but I guess that's one way to encourage the player to be careful. It reminds me of GTA 2 with syndicates on the map having their own hostility bar, where the more you do for one syndicate, the more the rival one hates you and tries to attack you on the street. The heat system is obviously similar to any other open world title. Committing crimes on the street trigger the police, but what I haven't seen before is being able to bribe them and keep them off your case, maybe even help you out in gang shootouts. In addition to random pedestrians on the streets even reacting to your actions, there are plenty of unique ways to influence the streets of New York for better or worse.
Watch out for this guy. He's going places.
They researched not just the film and novel, but architecture of New York in the 1940s to be as accurate to the city as possible. And even though it's set in New York, it's not like other open world titles where there's a 19th or 72nd street at every corner. It only has the main parts The Godfather sets itself, including Little Italy, Brooklyn, and Midtown Manhattan, while the rest insulates itself with old tall buildings. Almost feels like I'm driving through the prequel part of Godfather Part 2. It didn't look like it on first impression, but this is a decent sized map. The downside is that it makes journeys a grind, because some missions you go from one side of the map to meet up with someone, and the next thing to do is go all the way back again. Like, come on, Sonny, you couldn't just tell me what to do next by phone?
Yeah, Sonny, meet me at the compound. I'm gonna take a little drive.
Although it took me until right near the end of the game to discover you can call a driver to teleport you to any safe house on the map instantly. I hope I don't sleep with the fishes for that one. Like the story, it doesn't feel like a stone is left unturned. Parts of the map are taken straight from the movie, including the Corleone residence, the Italian restaurant where Michael had the meeting with Sollozzo and McCluskey, and the mansion where a Hollywood big shot had a horse's head inside his bed one time. Damn, is this game incredibly difficult to not spoil. But what I don't get about the map design is that, let's say, this part was designed for the toll scene. I'll leave it at that. But Sonny is essentially taking a longer way to get where he needs to go, but it's there because it's based off an iconic movie scene. At least design the map so a person appears as though he's taking the quickest route possible. There are parts that have a lot of detail to them, and the rest not so much. I suppose you can say the same about the GTA titles from the 3D universe era, where the parts of the map are clearly designed for story missions in mind and stand out like a sore thumb. It's just the claims by DeMartini that he'd rather walk than drive seem too far-fetched from my experience. Stealing cars was not appropriate to the era. It's worth noting too that safe houses don't have garages, and again, there are moments where you find yourself traveling from one side of the map to the other far too often. I say it is appropriate to steal cars in this era.
This belongs to me now.
The game's soundtrack, I mean, the love theme, of course it's in this game, how could you not? But because of all the unique moments you find yourself in, and there are no radio stations even when you're driving a car, there's a lot more than what appears in the film. In fact, the whole OST is original, with familiar songs simply homages to the film's counterpart. It certainly reduces the risk of this review being copyright claimed by Paramount. I'm already pushing my luck using clips of the film for this review. Since all the composers for the films had passed away by that point, the game was composed by Ashley Irwin and Bill Conti. The latter mostly known for films including Rocky, Karate Kid, and The Right Stuff, which he won an Academy Award for, so if anyone was going to compose the Godfather soundtrack that closely matches the film, it's them. Did I ever get sick of hearing the same revisions of one theme throughout the whole game? Well, despite playing the same two songs nearly every single time you drove a car, no. It all sounds fantastic, but I can understand if some do. Being set in the 40s, I expected the cars to control like they're, well, in the 40s, much like the Mafia games, the first one in particular. But no, it's like driving a car in a GTA title, albeit a little slower, so there's nothing to say. It's not like they're real-life models, and even with the Wiimote nunchuck setup, nothing unconventional that stands out control-wise, apart from how annoying enemies can be when being chased by one. No matter what car you're driving, even at top speed, an enemy will always get alongside you, and it seems like your car weighs half as much as theirs if you're trying to defend yourself. And if you somehow manage to shake them off, usually by luring them into an accident, they respawn right behind you almost instantly. So all you can do is take it, hoping you make it to the next checkpoint. Fortunately, the story missions have plenty of them. It's honestly not a hard game. However, in situations when a gang war is triggered, sometimes beyond your control thanks to some of the story missions with so many enemies to kill, you find yourself on the map wondering why you even bother sometimes. Final story mission was certainly a lot of fun to suffer through, and that's why this game rewards you for doing the side missions, knowing how things work in New York, aka being a smart gangster, since there seems to be a gameplay mechanic that allows life to be made easier. Whether it's bribing police, unlocking safe houses, earning more money to fill your wardrobe for extra respect, and punishing you for being reckless on the streets. To take over or extort a business, you go to a business owner and convince them you'll protect them.
Listen, Emilio. The Corleones run this neighborhood. If you're not paying them, you'll pay the consequences.
Why should I even give you a dime?
There's a meter here indicating how intimidated they are, and you either hurt them or damage their store until they eventually relent. In rare cases, you need to do a favor for them, but this is exclusive to the 7th gen versions.
What's it gonna be? Answer.
What more can you get from me? I'll pay.
The way the melee mechanics work here, it's pretty similar to Rockstar Games, including Bully and the Warriors. You have multiple attack options, different hands to punch, hook moves, grappling, headbutts, tossing to the curve, and using the environment.
Oh, Luca was right. You got balls.
In the case of the Wii version, they're motion controls, and the PlayStation 3 version supposedly uses 6-axis controls, which given my past experience with games that force you to use them, apart from Heavenly Sword, has never been a positive experience. This game was released the same year as the Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 3 when motion controls were all the rage, so utilizing it here doesn't surprise me.
What you gonna... Ah! I didn't do nothing. I'm gonna kick your ass. Bastard! Nice punch, pipsqueak! Ah!
While there's plenty of variety with the number of moves you can perform, whenever you're in the heat of the moment, it's very easy to find yourself waving the Wiimotes and nunchuck attachment all over the place, since no matter how in position you are in front of the sensor bar, it's almost impossible to get a good combination because all you want to do is clear the enemies or raise the threaten bar up there as quickly as possible. It's like your first day in boxing training. Also, side note, why can't third-party Wii games allow you to hold the Wiimote with your left hand as an option? I remember reviewing Mad World in 2015 having the same problem. It must be because of how robotic the movements are, so it's hard to distinguish a straight punch between a hook, for example. Sure, the prompts appear every time you need to perform a certain move, and there's a tutorial showing you how they all work, but sometimes the controller doesn't want to play ball. And whenever you're in a situation where you're surrounded by multiple enemies, melee attacks are useless because you can't inflict enough damage before they all stop you first.
Do nothing. Come on, help me out! Ah, that's too bad.
There are a couple of moments throughout the story where you have to perform a specific melee attack, but otherwise it's easier to go in either guns blazing or run over the gangsters protecting their businesses and take on whatever police heat it carries. There's something not right here if melee controls are usually the last resort. I see a lot of similarities in the shooting mechanics when comparing it to Scarface The World Is Yours. You can lock onto an enemy but also partially manually aim at their limbs. And what's interesting about enemies in this game is how they have weak spots on their body, not just headshot kills instantly, but if you shoot, let's say their shoulder or kneecap, they lose the ability to use them. They can't move or use their weapon, which for its time was a really cool aspect that should be implemented in any other game involving guns. Makes sense, really. Red Dead Redemption 2, as we all know, took that logic to another level. However, while it might be more effective, I find the shooting mechanics to be almost just as clunky because with the Wiimote you need to aim in front of the sensor bar to make it work properly, and the tutorial didn't set a very good first impression. I'm sure if you're playing this on the PS2 or Xbox with the right analog stick on the controller, it'd be a lot easier. And like the melee mechanics, you can't waste time. You gotta get them close like this and bada bing! You blow their brains all over your nice Ivy League suit. Seriously, if you take it slow, you're screwed. Yeah, take cover every few seconds to catch your breath, but it's better to go in full force.
I'm hit! Somebody nail this bastard!
Though as clunky as it looks, it's still pretty satisfying gunning down so many enemies at once with a Tommy gun. With so much smoke, parts of the buildings that can be blown away, and though there are no ragdoll physics, the different ways enemies fall to the ground and interact with the environment surrounding them, like the wall for example. Sorry if that makes me sound as sadistic as Luca Brasi when describing that. It's just when you compare this to something like GTA, The Godfather looks more exciting. It's doomsday for anyone that messes with the Corleone family. Just don't forget the cannoli.
No, I'm glad you're on my side.
I learned from the best.
So there are plenty of layers to how this business part of the game is structured. Reminds me of Scarface The World Is Yours and Grand Theft Auto Vice City stories. Again, the more you complete, the easier it makes Aldo's life. But eventually it felt repetitive because the process to taking over a business or racket was usually the same. Kill the rival gangsters protecting the business, intimidate the shop owner until they give up. And a lot of businesses and rackets use the same interior floor plans, even in the story missions. At least unlike Scarface, there's no process of collecting the money while being chased by what feels like everyone on the entire map. Instead, here's your paycheck, done. I assume the pressures of being a gangster are slightly less stressful in the Godfather universe than they are in the Scarface one. I also found plenty of glitches, or at least appeared to take over businesses in very unconventional ways. There was one moment when the bar owner asked me for a favor in exchange for the business, after I shut it up thinking I had to intimidate him. In this situation where I reached the basement and successfully bought the racket off his hands in the middle of a shootout, I still had killed all the enemies. And probably the weirdest moment of the whole game, I walked into the enemy's business without warning or gunfire, extorted the owner in a room where the enemies didn't see me, went upstairs and bought the gambling racket, all without firing a single bullet. Until the deal was complete, then the enemies started to attack. I mean, what good was all that security? It's worth noting in this scenario, the reason I was going in there peacefully was to complete a hitman mission which was actually outside another story above. It was hard to tell since the marker kept jumping all over the place. Needless to say, the business structure feels unfinished, at least on the Wii version anyway. But if you want to become the Don of New York City, you need to take over everything that isn't part of the Corleone family, including businesses, warehouse, hubs, and safe houses. And by that I mean if you complete all the story missions right up to the point where the film is about to reach its conclusion, you can't move on until you've taken over enough. The game has alternate endings based on how many you take over. You can either be the underboss to Don Corleone, a Don yourself, or the Don of NYC, essentially 100%ing the entire game and never have to take sides against the family again. Ever. Which, yeah, another reason to take over these businesses sooner than later, but it feels like such an anticlimactic way of reaching the end of a video game, needlessly taking over businesses one by one where the process becomes so mundane and frustrating, especially when it's so easy to trigger a mob war and find yourself losing more businesses than you gain. So, is the Godfather video game an offer I can't refuse? I don't know, I sure don't want to end up with a horse's head inside my bed a day after I release this video.
Mr. Corleone is a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately.
Okay, it's worth checking out. Seriously though, if you're not a fan of the Nintendo Wii's motion controls, I'd avoid this version. I guess you have to be a fan of the Godfather films and into video games to get any enjoyment out of this one, at least when playing it for the first time today. I like the nods to the film and the novel and the fact that some of the lead actors from the original film reprise their roles to feel more authentic to the latter. And with the different ways to attack your enemy, the customization options, the city reacting to your actions, and the number of ways you look and do to earn respect that affect the ending, it's a lot more diverse as an open world game than I expected. It's the repetitiveness of performing the tasks and how there's no strategy during the action that holds it back. Maybe not as solid as Scarface The World Is Yours or Simpsons Hit and Run, other licensed open world titles, but it's not bad. It's another one of those games where I don't know whether to recommend it or not because of its mixed bag of good or bad, so all I can do is let you use this video and decide for yourself. Thanks everyone on Patreon, including Bibbs, Brittleback, Chris Coffee Consumer, Cooper Munn, Darcy McIntosh, David Myers, Emmanuel Figueroa, Eric Barboza, Atmosphere, Indie DM, Mike Camilli, Sam Sneak, Tickford45, and Thomas Rosendale, Summer Collette for suggesting The Godfather in the latest Patreon suggestion thread, everyone who's donated to the Beyond Blue fundraiser, and everyone for watching this review. This was yet another very challenging video to make, as is most open world reviews, so I'm really sorry for taking so long to make these videos, guys, particularly in the last 12 months. Life has been flat out throughout, with the house, full-time work, marathon training, streaming on Twitch. To those who are continuing to tune in whenever a new video comes out, and to those who have recently subscribed and watching, I really appreciate it. ColourShed Productions isn't going anywhere. Game reviews will continue to be made unless I say so. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, support the Beyond Blue fundraiser, support on Patreon, join the Discord server, follow on Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. So many links it makes your head spin. Thanks again for watching, and I'll speak to you all soon. Spenny out.